at the economy a bit closer, as we've discussed. Nick Hopwood is a certified financial planner, the founder and president of Peak Wealth. He joins me here from time to time to make sure that I'm not too freaked out and panicked about the economy. PeakWM.com, he can calm you down too. Nick, good to have you here.
Good to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Good to see you. All right, listen. People, when things get a little bumpy, they get nervous. Heck, I get nervous. And your advice is be calm. If you've got a plan, stay with the plan. But I see inflation and I see other problems. How do I stay calm through all of this?
Well, you said it, trust the plan. And, I've been talking with a lot of clients the last week in particular, where we were reviewing October results, which were down a couple percent. On the heels of August and September down a couple percent, people are starting to get a little nervous, as you said. But guess what? Last week, the market comes in with a 6% return. Fixed income did well. All of a sudden, the October losses are erased. And now the fourth quarter is looking pretty good again. So a little patience helps. A little perspective helps.
All right. So hold steady. Don't be too conservative is what you're saying. Well, unless you're already retired or very close to being retired. So last week, the Fed also held rates steady. And the market, I guess they thought that was a good thing, right? Like you said, markets up 6%. Yields went down about 0.5%. Huge week for the markets, eliminating all those losses in October. That's good news. What about earnings? Earnings have been pretty decent from what I read, but I don't pay as much attention as you do.
Yeah, on the news you just mentioned, it was the best week in a year. We're also in the middle of earnings season. Over half of the S&P has released, and 79% of those companies are beating their expectations. So I would say overall earnings are looking pretty good. The net earnings are only up about 2% year over year, but it was against a tough comp last year. So overall earnings are looking pretty decent.
All right. So where are we right now? Third quarter GDP was what? 4.9%. Early estimates for Q4 back down to 2%. It appears the spike for Q3 will be short-lived. So we see, and we see this a lot. We see little bursts of good stuff, but then people go to the grocery store and people say, well, inflation's down if you don't count food, transportation, housing, and energy. Only the essentials. If you don't include those, inflation's great, Nick. I mean, people are like, what are you talking about? I just saw that report. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that, though, is that housing is a huge component of the CPI, and the way that the government calculates it, it's kind of wacky. There's like an 18-month lag, and in real life we see the inflation pressures for rent really easing, and so that's going to start working its way into the CPI official data. So honestly, I feel like it's headed into the 2% range. We didn't get the oil shock with the war that we were fearful of. Housing is coming down. It's working its way into the data. We all feel that one-time spike from 21 and 22 of inflation, but it is leveling off.
Yeah. All right, so here's something you and I talk about a lot, real estate. Real estate. You say clients are doing well buying property in Florida for Airbnbs. Now, I've been reading that Airbnbs are not, well, they're not as full as they have been. Bookings are down. And people are not making as much money as they did for a period of time. But you have a completely different take on it, from what I understand.
Well, I think what you said is true, but there's also an opportunity. In fact, last night I was talking with my boy, Jack. By the way, today's Jack's 14th birthday. Happy birthday, Jack. We were talking last
boy,
night.
Jack.
We were talking last night about this particular case, Steve, because, he's always asking about real estate, which I love to educate him on. Anyway, client case study here, buying a property in South Florida, Miami area, paying a pretty penny for the property. But get this, the mortgage is $6,000 per month, and the bookings have been averaging $11,000 per month. So that's like $130,000 in bookings. But guess what? The prior owner was also an Airbnb operator, and they had $260,000 worth of bookings the prior year. So are bookings down half? Well, that could be the reality, but are they still making a huge profit, on monthly cash flow? Yes.
So yeah, they're plus $5,000 a month. Obviously, they are covering the note and then some, right? And
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I guess so that'd be a luxury rental. I mean, I'm going to guess a $6,000 mortgage buys a pretty substantial house, even in Florida, with the prices down there. So it's a big rental. So they rent it a couple of times, they get to their $11,000, I would think, right?
Yeah, I think that they're just, doing a minimum weekly rental, and so a few $1,000s a week, especially this time of year in Miami would be lovely, right? And it was
Yeah.
$800,000 purchase. Yes, it was. It was a big one. And when I look at real estate rentals for most of my clients and for myself, I'm more interested in an annual rental, a multifamily property, uh, particularly with no leverage. So it's a different rate of return. It's a different profile altogether. But I really don't want to be in the hotel business.
Yeah. I wouldn't either. Private equity, by the way, you pointed this out to me just before we came on, also picking up homes in Florida and other tourist areas to be used for Airbnb rental purposes rather than just annual rentals. So I guess that's going to have to rely on the individual investor. Do you want an Airbnb where you have to deal with it on a weekly or monthly basis or a couple of times a month, or you just want to sign it once and forget about it and hope that the furnace doesn't break in the interim, right? I mean, that's a decision somebody has to make.
Yeah, and this was an article from the Wall Street Journal 2 days ago, I believe, where they reported that private equity is purchasing into South Florida for this explicit purpose of Airbnb short-term rentals. Whereas coming out of 2008, private equity was purchasing into single-family homes across the country in markets they thought would be good for annual rentals, but now they're going downstream into the short-term rentals. So for those of us who are interested in Airbnb, this gives me a boost of confidence if private equity is coming into the market that, it's still a good area to be.
No, don't disagree with that. All right, quick retirement tip. 99% of people underestimate how much money they spend each month. We have a template. Does Nick here to track those expenses? Tell me about that real quick.
Yeah, so oftentimes we consult with people leading up to retirement, and they just habitually underestimate their cost of living. They start listing their utilities and insurance, but really people have no idea how much they spend. I would say 99% of people don't know how much they spend, and it's a real problem when it comes to retirement planning. We have a tool at peakwm.com/expenses. It's a simple spreadsheet. You can keep it updated month by month, maybe 20 minutes a month. And I think it would be really beneficial to you as you're thinking about retirement and how much you actually need to live on per month and per year.
All right. For the folks on television, there should be a QR code available here so people can find peakwm.com real easily. Peakwm.com real easily, that QR code, so that you can get right to Nick. Always get a second opinion is what I say. Nick, greatly appreciate you being here, as always.
Thank you, Steve. And go to peakwm.com/Gruber for that free Social Security optimization analysis.
Say that again.
peakwm.com/Gruber for your free Social Security analysis.
There you go. Nick Hopwood, thank you very much.
Thank you.